Hey, I'm golf broadcaster Matt Adams. The updated and expanded second edition of my book, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments, is now available. Readers can expect to march with Arnie's Army at the 1960 U.S. Open, relive Jack Nicklaus's remarkable 1986 Masters win, and be amazed by the Tiger Slam. The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments. Pick it up where fine books are sold, including BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon.com.
This is our league, and this is your league. Broadcasting from the 55-yard line in Japan to the shores of the Great White North and everywhere around the world on Gridiron America Radio and the Sports History Network.
Gridiron Japan.
And hang on. And hey, everybody, welcome to Gridiron Japan. It is Greg and it is John Gunning, and Aaron Ellis is back with us to talk a whole bunch of football, not just in Japan, but Mexico and Europe. And how you doing, buddy?
Great, man. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Great to see you. And John?
Yeah, good to see you, Greg. Good to see Aaron. Yeah. It's been an age since we did this. Just back from Europe, traveling first time outside Japan in 6 years, so still jet lagged and getting over that. But yeah, happy to be back into it. Sumo's in full flow, but nice to be talking some football today.
And for everybody who's tuning in right now, we got the live stream going on Facebook, and we got the live stream going on the YouTube. So unfortunately, Twitter, we can't live stream on it anymore, apparently, because Elon wants money from all of us now. So what can you say? So, but with all that said, we are here talking. Like I said, it's been 2 months since John and I sat down. And Aaron, you're coming back here to Japan here pretty soon to saddle up with the Caterpillars. How's life been? How's life been treating you? You just came off another season, your first season over in Mexico. So, and that's what we're talking about today. LFA, Japan, and as history will show, you're the only guy that's ever played in all three leagues at quarterback.
Yeah, it's I'm glad to be home. I needed it. It was a good break, a little 2 months off. Whereas, before the European seasons were going into like July, and then I just go straight to Japan. This time I got to be home and get a little time off. But yeah, we researched, and it seems I'm the only player. And I mean, if there is someone else out there, please come forward. But I don't think there is anyone else. So I hope to offer some valuable insight on my experience. And, since I'm the only one, it's the closest thing we got. So whether you agree with it or not, it is what it is.
Yeah, there's been the number of players obviously in Japan is much lower than it is in Mexico and Europe. So it's easy enough to go through every player that's ever played in Japan. And there's been a few of them that have played in Mexico. There's been a few that have played in Europe, various leagues there. But yeah, as far as I can see, you are the only person who's played in all three. And so that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. There's a lot of stuff we can talk about the X League, which is obviously football in Japan is our main thing. But since we have you, and there's been a lot of talk over the last couple of years with the birth of the LFA and the growth of the birth and growth of the LFA, and then the birth of the ELF in Europe about how they stack up with Japan's league and against each other. So before we get into it today, I just want to kind of give people who don't know about the three leagues a little bit of background. So professional football, full-time professional football really only exists in the US and Canada, despite what you might read elsewhere. So the NFL, of course, and now you have the UFL, which is a combination of the XFL and the USFL. And up in Canada, you have the CFL. And those are really the only three full-time professional leagues that exist in the world, where every player on every team is a professional football player. The ELF in Europe was founded in 2021, and it calls itself a professionalized league. In theory, every player is going to get something from their team all the time, but sometimes it's gas money, sometimes it's pocket change, sometimes it's nothing. So it's a lot of stuff. You'll probably learn about these leagues. A lot of the financial stuff is hidden, so it's hard to get accurate information. Mexico, its league has been around since 2016. Again, it's a kind of semi-professional league where you have import players receiving a salary. Almost all are American. Same in Europe, same in Japan. And then the vast majority of the roster is made up of domestic players, Japanese, Europeans, Mexicans, and most of those, very few of those actually ever get any kind of payment. There's a few pros in Japan, but the majority are just doing it part-time, like weekend players. There's a lot of differences, a lot of similarities between the three leagues. Japan obviously has been around since 1971, has 4 divisions, 54 teams, 12 in the top tier. Europe has 17 teams, single tier. Mexico has 1. So when we say Europe, we're talking about the ELF, the European League of Football. There are a whole ton of leagues in Europe, but the top one pretty much now is the European League of Football. That league and the LFA in Mexico based on their play on NFL rules, whereas in Japan it's NCAA. The seasons are different. The number of games are different. Europe has the most, 14 regular season games as opposed to 8 in Mexico and 6 in Japan. And the biggest difference probably between the three leagues is the number of Americans or the number of import players. So in Japan, it's been reduced down to 3 this season. You can have 2 on the field at any one time. Europe is very similar, 4 what they call A imports there and 2 on the field at the same time. They also have a whole thing with imports from different European countries, but we'll just deal with that as like it's European League, so Europeans are European. And Mexico is vastly different. They have up to 16 Americans on a team and up to 8 on the field at one time, and the top teams usually do have 8, so they're almost like the top teams in Mexico are mostly American. If you got 8 of 11 players on the field being American, then you can say that. But and with Caudillos, the team that won there last year, like we were just looking at it, they have 10 former D1 players on their team, which is very different from Japan. So that's kind of an overview. Aaron, of course, as we said, he's the only player who played in all 3 leagues. He was with Stuttgart Surge in the ELF after playing in different places in Europe. Then you came over to Japan. You've been with Dentsu Caterpillars, first in Tier 2 in Japan, which is X1 area, and then brought them up to Tier 1, X1 Super. And most recently, you were with Gallos Negros in Mexico in the LFA. I think that season finished only a couple of months ago, right? Maybe 3 months ago? Is it about that?
End of May.
End of May, yeah. So like that.
Yeah.
So what we're going to try and do today basically is compare and contrast the 3 leagues. There are differing opinions about which one is better, which one is stronger. But there's a whole range of ways we can look at them. And because Aaron has played in all 3, and myself and Greg are, football nutcases who are just obsessed with football around the world. We spend way more time watching these games and these leagues and studying about them than anyone in their right mind should. But first of all, Aaron, just your general impression of the 3 leagues, like your grand overview. You see you're wearing your Caterpillar stuff. So like positive, negative, or like how do you feel about level of play, we'll say, or what would be your first impression of each league?
Yeah, so first, I'm doing this in hopes that we can keep generating the buzz of trying to get these games played internationally. Because at the end of the day, I do have the closest experience with all of them to compare. But at the end of the day, like we've talked about before, the only way to truly settle it would be a game. So going through the leagues, just start off from a grand overview. The LFA is a very talented league. There's a lot of organizational issues in that league. There's a lot of chaotic things going on. And when I speak about these leagues, I'm going to speak about them as a whole, right? Like Caudillos is the exception. They're not the rule in the LFA, okay? The reason Caudillos is so strong is they actually have a pretty stable organization over there with good coaches, and they've brought back a lot of the same players over the last couple years. So there's a lot of stability there. Again, that's the exception in that league. It's not the rule, right? There's a lot of mess going on with some of the teams there. It is a very dirty league. The refs do not do a great job protecting players. There's a lot of things that let go over there. People getting stomped on and punched and just dirty stuff. But it's a very talented league for sure. Great fan base. The Mexican fan base is a very passionate fan base, as you know, for sports in general. So it's no different for football for the people that are in that world over there. I think the home game atmosphere is a lot of fun for sure. But yeah, so going over the ELF, you get kind of like a mix of everything, right? Like some teams have good fan bases, some teams get 500 people at games. Some teams have really good coaching, some teams have really bad coaching, right? And again, I gotta speak as general because, again, Rainfire and Vienna, and now it's like Stuttgart, they're the exception, they're not the rule. Okay, this isn't a league where everyone's like that. The amount of, I think we're over 30 blowouts this year in the ELF, going into week 9 or 10 or whatever week we're in now. But I very much like football in Europe. It's a good quality of life over there, especially it depends where you are, but for the most part, anywhere you're at in Europe, you're not stressing about a lot of stuff.
You're not lost.
Charm. Yeah, you're not lost. There's a certain charm to football in Europe too. Most places have English speakers and just, there's not many places you can go where you get paid to play football and like immediately after the game, everyone's popping beers. Stone Cold Steve Austin and some beers on the bus ride home. It's one of those things. And then Japan, you kind of get some really elite level things, as it comes to coaching and discipline, football discipline, the local players. And then, some things that hurt the league, right? Like fan turnout, the marketing of the league, some of the rules that happen and stuff. But that's my general overview. We're going to dive in deeper on more specific topics, but that's kind of, just the top down, real quick summation of all 3 leagues there.
Yeah, that's really good. Obviously, like you said, you have a lot of first-hand experience. So when you talk about things like the quality of the refs or the fan, experience, things like that, you've experienced it firsthand. So probably the first thing I guess a lot of people want to know, and probably the thing of most debate is, which league is the best or which is the highest teams. We bring out rankings all the time on Inside Sport Japan. So I just realized I've left my descriptor still as NFL free agent. I didn't actually mean to change that back, but
I can go back in and change it for you, dude.
Technically, it's true. I'm unsigned at the moment. We'll see. I don't know. Now that we have, Devin Phelps here is at Silver Stars, a close friend of Tyson Bagent. So I try and get some film in front of the Bears coaches, and we'll see. But normally when we brought out these rankings, they have the Japanese teams at the top, and obviously the Mexicans and Europeans don't agree with that. One thing I'll say is there are no, like you said, Aaron, there have been no games between any of the club teams since between the 3 leagues since I think the last one was going to be Obik went to Germany twice. They played Dusseldorf Panther and they played the Dresden Monarchs in 2012 and 13. Beat both those teams in Germany, but they are the only games between Japan and Europe on a club level. Obviously, there have been a lot of international games. Japan has put it up many times. You might have seen this online. Japan owns a 10-0 win rate against Europe. And the average score is 36-3 or 36-6 or something like that. So Japanese national team has blown out every European national team it's faced. The last game was a decade ago, though. So, a lot of them, all those players are pretty much retired. But Mexico normally beats Europe as well in world championships at junior or senior level or whatever. And I think the big reason, obviously, for that is because Japan and Mexico have had what you could call D1 college football for, a century, essentially. Whereas Europe is a club-based system that doesn't have, although it's developing a little bit in some places, but it still doesn't really have an advanced collegiate football system, and I think that makes a massive difference. But having said that, I think there's been a lot of improvements in Europe, obviously with the ELF and the coaches that have come in and the consolidate. I don't think there's been better talent in all that much, but I think there's a consolidation of talent in more clumps. And one thing people were talking about was the Vienna Vikings. So in Austria, we'll say there are two teams, Raiders, Tirol, and Vienna Vikings. And before the ELF was formed, Raiders were the dominant club. But as soon as the ELF was formed, the Vikings, flipped the switch, flipped the script and became dominant. And there were a lot of people on Reddit who were saying one of the reasons for that is the ELF was much more attractive than just playing in the Austrian league. So you got a lot of the best players from all of the smaller teams or local teams. The best one or two players from those teams went to Vikings because they wanted to play in a higher, like, pan-European league. And of course, like, there's a coaching and all the rest. So you get better clumps of talent, and they get to work together and train together, and
Absolutely.
obviously get coached better. So
and I would say that Austria is the. I mean, sure, Germany's got good sources as well, but Austria has some of the best player development out of all the European countries. I mean, you still see the Austrian Football League is still very competitive, even with the ELF. I mean, for God's sakes, Vienna has an AFL team still, and that AFL team's about to play for the Austrian Bowl this weekend.
Yeah.
Right?
And they would beat probably quite a few of the
there's
ELF
active
teams well.
football school programs in Austria. Raiders had one for a while. I mean, it's so they are definitely the exception, not the rule when it comes to player development.
So if we say like there has been a pretty big jump, or a lot of people think there has anyway, in Europe over the last few years. And obviously the Mexican League has consolidated things, and the X League made its biggest jump probably a decade ago when it started bringing all the American coaches and American players. It's always been a huge amount of local talent here in the collegiate system. I think that's probably what separated Japan from Mexico. It looks like Mexico hasn't embraced American coaching to the same degree. But let's just get this one out of the way straight. So we have like the top teams in Japan. Obviously, the big three are probably Fujitsu Frontiers, Obik Seagulls, and Panasonic Impulse. And Fujitsu Frontiers have been utterly dominant over the last 10 years. I think they've won 8 of the last 10 championships. I mean, the games between themselves and Obik and Panasonic are always close, but Fujitsu just win almost all of them, and they are the most dominant team. Whereas in Mexico, Caudillos, who you've talked about, they joined the LFA from a rival farm league that went bust, and they haven't lost a game in the first 2 seasons. They just ran through the league for the first 2 seasons, unbeaten, 2 championships. In Europe, you have obviously Vienna, who we've mentioned, they won a championship. Rhein Fire last year looked like one of the best teams ever seen in Europe. Stuttgart, your old team, they took a lot of Schwäbisch Hall Unicorns' best talent and coaching and players and made a massive leap as well. So if you were to compare to say the top teams, of course we should say in Mexico as well, you have teams like Dinos and Fundidores, your friend Shelton Epler, who give a hand to Vienna as well. We might make this a series and bring people in, but obviously you're ahead of the list. But looking at those top teams, the top 2 to 3 in Europe, Mexico, and Japan, how do they compare?
Yeah, so if we're looking at top programs, top 4, whatever, I have to give it to the X League, and I just have to. I mean, you talk about what makes a great football program, what makes a great football team. One, consistency for sure, right? You got to have consistency, the discipline, the stability, the cohesion, the coaching, right? Fujitsu, Panasonic, they have really great coaches on staff, very good coaches on staff. I mean, very good coaches. Mexico has good Mexican coaches. They're spread out. I would say half and half. It's 50-50 if you have a very great coach or not. There's no American coaches, and this isn't me being disrespectful. American coaches are the best American football coaches in the world. Okay. Is that to say there's no extremely great coaches that aren't American around the world? No, not at all. There are, but again, the exception, not the rule, right? Now Europe, you have some great American coaches, right? That's why you see programs like, let's look at the top programs. We got Rainfire, we got Vienna Vikings, we got Stuttgart Surge. Paris is doing really well this year. I have yet to put them up there though, because they're kind of 50-50. Sometimes you get the great program, sometimes they go out there and just do stupid things and lose football games. But I'll go Rainfire, Stuttgart, and Vienna. What do they all have in common? They have very good American coaches on their staff, and not just like a head coach, like an O-line coach, a knowledgeable DB coach. Like, they have people in places that really know and have been doing this for a long time of how to help push those players and give them more, right? Whereas in the LFA, dude, I didn't learn anything going there. I did not learn one thing about football. Not one thing. I had to do the teaching half the time. And then when I was doing teaching half the time, I got, yelled at, called toxic, all these different things. So I gotta go. I gotta give it to the X League. Got it, because I don't see a world where teams that are always changing year to year. Because again, Cadillos is the exception, not the rule. Okay, the only other team that has been somewhat consistent is Fundadores, and they lost in the playoffs. But year to year, Fujitsu's roster, Obic's roster, Panasonic roster doesn't change much. It doesn't. The Americans, for the most part, have been consistent. The starting local Japanese players has been pretty much the same. The only thing you could say might change are some backup roles. Some guys that are fighting for spots. But I will take Fujitsu 10 times out of 10 because those guys have been playing together for a while.
Okay, so you've played. You didn't play Fujitsu, right? You played Panasonic and you played Obic.
Yeah, so let's perfect.
Yeah,
that's exactly where I was segueing into.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, as quarterback, when you're facing Panasonic, when you're facing Obic, you've obviously played against Caudillos. When you were Surge, did you play against Vienna or Galaxy?
No, I played when I was with the Surge. I played against Frankfurt that year, and that year was when Frankfurt won it all. Yeah, they were the top team that year. And I'll tell you what, I had in my career, not just professional, like from middle school, high school, college, I have never felt so useless and overwhelmed in a football game like I did playing Panasonic. Okay, never in my life. And that's Cadillos having, 13 more Americans. Okay. Yeah. Because just because you have more Americans doesn't mean you're a better team. It doesn't.
Right.
Because football, I've always preached, football isn't an individual sport. Doesn't matter how talented you are. There's still so many more things that go into winning a football game. And so let's look at it. When we played Cadillos, we lost 28-14. Okay.
Okay.
Going late into the fourth quarter, it was 21-14. We had opportunities to try and get close and tie the game. I got sacked 10 times that game, so there was a lot of pressure, man. Trying to get the ball out quick. We made some plays. Our defense played pretty well. We were in that thing. Whereas, so I threw for like 285 and 2 touchdowns, and we were no turnovers. We were doing well, taking what they were giving us, and then rewind to last year, playing Panasonic in the X1 Super. We lost 70-0. It hurts my soul to say. I really wanted to sweep this one under the rug, but we got to talk about it. We lost 70-0.
Yeah. Just before we just before we do that, I think Greg, there's a hum. Your mic is picking up a humming somewhere.
Oh, you know what? I'm glad you're saying it. It's probably my fan on my end, so I'll mute myself on my end. And
okay.
Sorry about that.
It could have been that.
No, I could hear it because I saw when you muted it stopped a second ago. But all right, so that's what did you 70 something? Okay, so you never felt as useless in your life. Yeah,
dude, never. I had 74 yards passing.
And what was that? What's the advantage that Panasonic have over Caudillos, who have a lot of great talent on their team?
Went into the Caudillos game, their scheme was very basic.
Okay.
And it's not an insult. They're very talented. So when you have that much talent, that overrides scheme against most teams.
Okay.
But you play a team like Panasonic, who has the talent as well, plus the discipline of being a football player, and the cohesion of playing together for so long, add great American coaching and their scheme. I'll tell you what, dude. I think I went over the game afterwards, watched everything on Huddle and broke it down. There was, and I know they were not calling all their stuff for us. You know what I mean? They were trying to keep it vanilla, but there was still, I mean, at least over 15 different types of looks they were giving us on what they were doing. Split coverages, cover two man, cover two Tampa. Some cover 3 in there, cover 6, and just different blitzes and fronts. They went from a 3 down to a 4 down in the middle of the game, going from a 3-3 stack to a 4-3. Bringing different stunts and twists and blitzes, and I prepared well for that game because I was like, okay, we have to know what they're doing, and we just, we don't practice as much as those other teams, but we were just so overwhelmed. And I've never felt that way. Even I've lost games before by multiple scores, but I never felt like I couldn't do anything. After the first quarter of that Panasonic game, I was like, oh boy, this is going to be a rough day. So, I mean, and playing Frankfurt in 2021, they were a very great team too. And they whooped us. But I didn't feel necessarily like we couldn't do anything. We had awful coaching. We had no preparation. We went into that game with 6 plays, right? So yeah, that for me, that's how I know that the top programs in the X1 Super, it's a different level.
Yeah, my own, like I said, the last time a European team played a Japanese team was 2014 in what they call the German Japan Bowl. I don't know why they called it like one German and one Japan, but anyway, that was in Kawasaki in 2014. Germany across the board, bigger players, stronger players, but it was very similar to what you said there. Like the D-line was arriving with the ball into the quarterback's hands. Like I noticed that even though the O-line could have out-muscled or outsized the D-line, it was like trying to catch cats. They couldn't figure out where they were coming from or how. So it was just, there were too many stunts, too many fronts. And like Japan, I think it's weird. It's not what you imagine, but Japan's strength has always been defense. Like if you look at the score ahead of me here, like this is what they beat the Ivy League by in January, right? So they allowed, a D1 FCS, like that half that Ivy League roster went on to D1 FBS programs like Duke and Vanderbilt and stuff like that. Every single player on that team, I know the Ivy League is not what people normally consider D1 FCS, but I mean, it is technically, but it's not a scholarship program. But still, there's a lot of good players on that, and every single player on that team was an all Ivy selection. Like that was minimum required. So, they were all Ivy. Half of them were going to D1 FBS programs. And every one of them was a senior, a graduating senior. So they all had 4 years at least of college football behind them, and they scored 5 points. So like this, and even last year, like they won 24 20. So it's, Japan's defense,
I watched
think,
that
has
game.
always been good. Yeah.
It wasn't incompetence.
No.
Ivy League had great players on it, dude.
Yeah,
They were locked down.
yeah.
Like the Japanese defense has always been, like you said, the focal point.
Yeah.
Offensively, they've never been flashy. The only time a Japanese offense really been flashy was when Kevin Kraft was still playing quarterback. That's when it was flashy, like that
That's
West
when,
Coast.
What was it?
Put up a lot of points.
Yeah, that was IBM putting up like 120 points in some games, and other games would be like 65, 63, and
Yeah.
I think there was one semifinal where there was like a combined 19 touchdowns or something like that. Yeah, that's heady days. But
so this isn't me saying that Cadillos couldn't win against X1 super top teams. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it would be a hell of a tall order because it's just, man, these guys have been playing together for so long, dude. You know, I mean, the teams in the LFA are so wishy-washy, right? Like if they don't win the championship, all of a sudden they have to get brand new Americans. They got to cut everybody and get new ones and start over. And it's like, that's not how teams work, right? Like Cadillos came in with a great situation. They have a lot of funding. They got a lot of support. They have good coaches, so now they're keeping their guys, Jeremy Johnson, a couple of years, he's been playing really good football. Yeah.
I think the thing with Cadillos, like you said, it's a different sort of level with them. They have 6 players who played D1 FBS. They have 4 who played D1 FCS. Couple of D2 guys, 3 D3 guys, and an NAIA, the toughest conference of all, as you know. So they're stacked obviously with Americans. Like you said, it doesn't matter just because you have Americans. The Ivy League was a complete American team. Japan played without any Americans against the Spring League in 2020. The Spring League morphed into, the USFL, and that Spring League team had a bunch of what was it, Metzenberger? No, what was it, the NFL quarterback, I think it was a Browns quarterback, was it? There was a whole ton of like former NFL guys on that team, and Japan was with them all the way to the 4th quarter without having any Americans on their team. So Japanese teams are well able to stack up against American talent because of the discipline, because of the complexity, and because they've all been playing football. I see it, like they practice, 6 hours, 7 hours, and it's like 3 or 4 hours in the field and 3 or 4 hours again in the classroom. The college teams practice every single day. Again, the Mexican teams also have that, which is why they have great local talent. But the dedication to, like, you rarely see Japanese players make mistakes compared to they know their assignments. They know what they're supposed to do. They're so well drilled.
That's the biggest thing that people need to understand, right? Like Cadillos is a big play offense, right? They use their playmakers. Jeremy throws up a lot of 50-50 balls because he knows his guys are going to get it, right?
Yeah.
Whereas Japan, very rarely you're getting that big play. You might have 2 to 3 opportunities a game to get that big play.
Yeah.
How are you successful offense in Japan? Well, what does that look like? It looks like consistent first downs. That's what it looks like. Moving the ball consistently, quick game, finding a running game, stealing these first downs on 3rd and long. That's how you do it. I played in there 2 years now. Yeah. You'll get one deep passing touchdown, and very rarely will you get another chance after that because they fix it. Because Japan defense keeps everything in front of them. They force you to be very consistent and disciplined in taking what they give you all the way down the field. And the problem with a lot of these superstar teams, they don't like doing that. They want to throw deep. That's why our defense was doing well against Cadillos and Fundadores, because they were trying to force things deep, trying to force that big play, and our defense wasn't allowing the big play.
So then I'm interested in what you think a team like Cadillos or Fundadores or Dinos would do against the big European teams.
Talking about that.
Yeah.
I think they win. I think the LFA teams win.
Okay.
Now, that being said, I believe that the top 3 teams in the ELF would make it a fight.
Mm.
I think the team that has the best chance of beating a team like Cadillos, Dinos, or Fundadores would be Vienna, only
Mm.
because those guys in Vienna have been playing together for so long, you know?
Okay.
Because even before the ELF, a lot of these guys were still playing together in the Austrian league,
Mm.
right? And Chris, their head coach, Chris Calique, great guy, dude, great guy, very knowledgeable coach. He's been there for a decade.
Yeah. Longest tenured
For
coach,
almost a
right?
decade. Yeah, like he has built something very special there. Now you could argue Stuttgart now as well, because they are all the Unicorns players that have been playing and coaching together,
Yeah.
because their head coach was the Unicorns head coach for their
Jordan,
span
right?
of like domination.
What's that?
So
Jordan Newman? What is it?
Jordan Newman, yeah, he's also a
Newman.
great coach, very
Yeah.
knowledgeable, very good at his craft. Now, again, Rainfire is a great program. I just, when it comes to these types of international games,
Mm.
I'd rather the team go over and play that's done it, been it. You know what I mean? That have been
Yeah.
it together for so long. I would love to see Vienna Vikings play, Cadillos or Dinos or Fundadores. I think that would be a good game. I think Cadillos would come out on top, but I again, anything can happen in a football game,
Yeah.
man. I'm
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
saying Cadillos can't win in the X1 Super. I'm not saying Vienna can't go to the LFA or the X1 Super and sneak out a win. I'm not saying that at all.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
speaking from my pure experience, and I'm already hearing all the trolls online telling me, trying to say things to
Well,
discredit what I'm saying.
you're the only one who's actually, had to face them
I'm the
on
only
the
one that's
field.
done it. So I'll tell you
Yeah.
what, if you
Yeah.
don't agree, how about you go try and play in the X League, the
Yeah.
LFA, and the ELF and make your own opinion? Because
Yeah.
I'm telling you right now, a lot of these dudes wouldn't make it in the
Yeah.
X League.
Right.
They
Yeah.
wouldn't.
Yeah.
One, they would never get recruited. I am very vocal about how lucky and fortunate I was that
Mm.
Dentsu took a chance on me,
Mm.
because not a lot of NAIA kids get opportunities in the X League. I was the
Yeah.
first NAIA quarterback in the
Yeah.
X League. I
Yeah.
was very fortunate. Most of the time it's those D1 NFL cut guys.
Yeah.
So,
But then
yeah,
again, I mean, you took that opportunity, and then obviously then you had Tyler followed in your footsteps. Same area of the country, NAIA, and he got in with Seagulls, and John Stanton obviously is the the poster boy for that.
OG.
The D3. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, we always have to sort of be a little like I always say, like, this guy's D1 FBS or something, but you never know, because just the school you went to, there's so many stories, the reasons why people played at certain schools, or
Yeah.
what chances they did or didn't get, and you can find. I mean, there's guys in the NFL playing from every division, right? Superstars, so undrafted players, and like you never know how good somebody can be till they're put in the right situation.
Well, yeah,
So
and we all know that making in the X League,
yeah,
there's a lot of top elite tier talent that has come into Japan and then not come back because they weren't wanted back. Why? Because when you come and play in Japan, it's more than yourself, dude. That's why I love it. It's not about you at all, right? There's no ego. You can't go in with this selfish ego. And I learned it my first year, like it's all different. It's zero. No one gives a crap about you specifically. It's about our team together. It's about our team. That's it. It's about us, the collective. And what I noticed in LFA is it's a lot of ego, dude.
Yeah.
So much ego. It's hey, look at me, I'm the greatest ever. You go
So
to
it is funny when
mindset.
when you watch it on screen. I'm watching stuff in the LFA going, that would be a penalty in Japan. That would be a 15-yard penalty. That would be unsportsmanlike. Like, we can't see that, but I mean, it's over the top here. If you spike spin the ball, it's a 15-yard unsportsmanlike
Yeah, no, I don't agree with
penalty,
that, right?
so
Like
that's ridiculous.
Japan is a little overbearing on some of that.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying having fun in the LFA is bad. It's not at all. Like like celebrating with your teammates in fun ways is cool. It is cool, but I'm talking about like the egotistical maniacs. You know what I mean? Like the people where it's all about me. It's only about me. If I don't get the ball 20 times a game, then screw all of you type deal. That
So
stuff doesn't fly in Japan. Now in Europe, you definitely get a much more even keel in European League of Football. You get a mix,
hmm,
right? You get programs like Vienna where Chris has set that foundation. It's about us. It's not about any individual player, and there are teams that do that. And then there's some teams where it's like, hey, I'm just going to be me and do my thing. I don't care about you guys.
I think we can see from what you're saying and just looking at results and stuff like that. There's definitely tiers within tiers in these leagues. You have
Yeah,
like the
absolutely.
top 4 or 5 teams in each league are a separate world unto themselves, and that's why they win championships. That's why they do so well. I think as you go down, I mean, there are obviously big drop-offs in each league as you go further down. But even so, I think it'd be a bit strange to compare the levels of the different things. Like comparing the levels of the top team, I think is enough for that. But what I'd like to know, I think probably there's a lot of players watching this or will be watching this who'd like to know about the lifestyle in each country. So how hard is it to adjust? How quick? Like obviously Europe, like you said, there's a lot of English. Japan, no English at all practically. But and we also have to put in the caveat that you've played for one team in each league.
Yeah.
So playing for Dentsu is not the same as playing for Fujitsu or Obake or Panasonic.
Absolutely.
It's so. You're not giving like a league wide, because the experiences are very, very different team to team. But generally speaking, how quickly did you settle into each place, and what were some of the difficulties or good points of each country playing football in them?
Yeah. So just to reiterate exactly what John said, this is by my team experience, right? Like I know I've been vocal about some of the things that happened to me with Gallos. That doesn't happen on some teams in the LFA, right? So I'm not going to paint the league broad picture here, but I will talk about my experiences and things I've heard from other teams as well. I'm going to go by a few categories, right? All right. So when it comes to pay, it's Japan, LFA, ELF in that order. Okay. I'm not going to get into too many details, but it's a pretty big gap between the three.
Between each of the three.
Between each of the three, right?
Okay.
So like in the ELF, I'm sure there's a couple players that are getting pretty good, like higher end contracts, but as a whole, most Americans aren't getting that like extreme money. Whereas the LFA was a pretty good paycheck for sure. Especially for an 8-game season, because it was paid every game. It wasn't a monthly thing.
Okay.
And then, Japan's just top. Japan's the best pay you can get outside of North America.
Yeah,
it just is. I've seen contracts all over the place. Even the low end in Japan is still higher end European. So that's the pay. When it comes to lifestyle, that's a hard thing to break down because everyone has different things they enjoy. Right? Like my receiver Ray loved Mexico because he's a very like with the flow, chaotic type of person. Like, you know what I mean? He likes loud music and having fun and all this stuff. Whereas I'm more of a reserved kind of guy. I'm not a huge social person. That's where like I lean towards Japan because of how how the social contract in Japan, right? The respect to one another, we're not going to yell and scream on trains. We're going to be quiet, respectful to our other people here. So for me, I got to go Japan, Europe, Mexico.
Okay.
For that. You're like I said, Europe, you kind of get a mix of both, right? You kind of get places where you can be a little more rowdy and stuff, and then you got places where people are more quiet, calm, reserved.
Yeah, Spain is Mexico and Germany is Japan.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah. Now living experience wise, I got to go Europe, Japan, Mexico.
Okay.
Because Europe, one of my favorite memories is with the Telf Patriots, especially that first year when we did something really special together. Living in the Swiss Alps, Looking out my window to the mountains, zero concern about healthcare, insurance, high food quality, all that good stuff, right? Like just quality of life in a lot of places in Europe is so great, man. Like it really is some of the best experiences I've had. It's good in Japan too. It's just, you got these really small apartments, everything's crammed together. Tokyo, it's a place where some days you love Tokyo, some days you hate Tokyo because it's just there's so much going on, right? Now we got Greg over here who lives on the south end, so he's got a little more of a peaceful, environment type, with good nature and stuff.
I'm out in the boonies, basically.
Yeah, he's in the boonies. And then Mexico, it just really was our living situation was pretty okay. We were living in a like student living type place, with a pool and stuff. So it was nice. Don't get me wrong, it was nice, but it was very chaotic for me, man. It's not somewhere I'd like to be. That was that specific situation though. I don't know every other teams in the LFA living situations. I'm sure there's better ones.
Yeah,
I heard of some bad ones too. Like I heard of a couple bad ones as well. But
I've talked to a lot of players in Mexico, and it's hit and miss. I think is best because you can. I mean, you have players like Ocho Cinco and Trent Richardson, and like they're down there like playing occasionally in those leagues. So it's weird. You can play alongside former superstars. You can be in like the most beautiful places, and then you can end up like you in difficult situations. So I think talking to players in all of the different countries and leagues, like just sticking to Europe to being ELF rather than some of the smaller leagues and smaller countries, which are really widely varied. But yeah, so Mexico always seems like more like that box of chocolates type of thing. You just never know what your situation is going to be. Europe, like you said, I think we have a lot of guys, who've like James Brooks is obviously the most famous example going between, Prague and IBM. And like it seems to be a thing now where people would like to play in Europe in the spring and then play in Japan in the fall. So
it's like my favorite thing to do.
Yeah, there is an attractiveness to playing Europe. You have so many different cultures, so many different countries in such a small area. If you're in Japan, it took me 27 hours to get to Ireland last, a couple of weeks ago. So and even like Korea is the only place that's really like weekend breakaway. Like that's and Korea is, it's nice and all. I like Korea, but if you're looking for somewhere like really different, it's if you want to go to Hawaii, it's like 6 hours, whatever, 7 hours. So it's like there's nowhere close to here. So you're kind of stuck to it's not like Europe where you can go to like completely different culture 30 minutes down the road in your car, So but like I agree with you. Temperament, the age of the player, family situation, everything, affects that kind of stuff for sure.
And then I have two more categories for like living wise and just experience wise, when it comes to like fan base, fan service, I got to give it to LFA first, Mexico first. Yeah, I'm going to put Mexico at number one, then Europe, and then Japan, because I'll tell you what, in Mexico, man, one of my favorite experiences about it was the kids and, kids coming to the games. Like our stands were packed almost every home game, wanting autographs. I would sign, 50 autographs after every game. Kids coming up to me, please sign my shirt, please sign my ball. Going to different sponsorship events on TV or whatever. Those fans really look up to you, and they really like, wow, it's Aaron from Gallos. And it's such a great feeling because I actually feel like, I can make that kid's day. Like I can do something right now. I can play catch with him. I can do something that he'll remember for a while, and that will be special for him. So as professional athletes, that's something a lot of us want to be able to do.
Yeah.
And then in Europe, again, it's kind of a mix, right? Like if you're playing for Vienna, there's going to be a lot of people that look up to you. But if you're playing for like, smaller teams like Prague or whatever, there isn't as much of a fan base or a demand in that country for football. So again, it depends there. And then Japan has its very small football cult, right? Like, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, Japanese fans are great, and I love that they come out and support and all these things. But I wish we could find a way to grow that. You know what I mean? Make it on a much more sustainable, big basis. But and
It
then
used to be back in the day. That's, I think, one of the problems is they're always looking backwards here. But yeah, you used to have like crowds of 25,000 for preseason games and stuff in the spring.
yeah,
It was, now it's like whatever the 47th most. Like it's been in sort of decline off the field, and it used to be on TV all the time. There was a lot of stuff that other countries aspire to, and Japan obviously aspires to now, that did exist here in the 70s and 80s, especially maybe the 80s. And then with the financial crisis in the late 90s, I think, like, all the banks pulled the sponsorships, and there was no real plan B, I think, and like there never really has. And it was the thing we've always talked about. As the level on the field kept rising and the number of good players kept increasing, the promotion and the awareness that he kept going down, and that getting smaller. So it was a weird sort of crossing of the streams as things went in opposite directions off and on the field. But yeah, like Europe as well. I don't trust or believe most of the ELF stats or figures, but I have a lot of friends who are at games and follow them, and like people who try to judge, and like it's really, I think every game is exaggerated. I'm pretty sure. I mean, you've seen like the championship game that had 8,000, and then suddenly it jumps to 14,000 like 2 minutes later after the game is finished. So there's all kinds of shady stuff, I think, going on. But they do, even if they don't have 25,000 at a game like they would claim earlier this season, there's definitely 15,000 there, and that's a regular season game. You would just never ever get anything close to that for a regular season game in Japan. Even semifinals, you won't get that. You get 5,000 maybe for a semifinal between Panasonic, between Fujitsu and Obi. Maybe you get. I mean, there are games in tier 2 where you have like 150 people. Like you have 500, 600 people at some of the lower team games in X1. Like it's you might get 1,000 is kind of like maybe a really average game in Japan. Whereas in Europe, like I'm seeing these teams in the top half of the ELF rating 4,000 or 5,000 on the regular, and people are disappointed with those numbers. So yeah, I mean that's the one thing I have to give that league in Europe. Like they've definitely they faked it. I don't know if they've made it. I mean, they faked a lot of stuff, I think, at the start, but they definitely have. I don't know what the numbers are like in Mexico, but they definitely have far bigger crowds for the regular season. Still, Japan has the championship game in Tokyo Dome, which doesn't maybe get the 35,000 it used to, but it's still getting like close to 25, 30,000. So,
and just in general too, just with the LFA, watching them. I mean, you just saw the marketing that went into it, even though their games were on YouTube. Yeah, there was, like you said, there was an enthusiasm in the stands. You could feel it. For as bad, sometimes as bad as that LFA video was and how they were working. I mean, the guys that were working the cameras weren't always the best, but you could see it in the stands.
Yeah. It was also free. So like my thing is, if a video quality isn't that amazing, if it's free, it's whatever, right? But when you're paying for like the ELF Game Pass and it's just as bad at times, or the
worse,
Game Pass and it's very vanilla,
right?
It's basic, just recording, right? So one of my favorite memories will always be playing Galgos at home. Right, we were down. We get an interception. Next play, we throw the touchdown to JJ Hop, and we take the lead. We go for a 2-point conversion. I throw it off my back foot. My receiver catches it, and everything just goes nuts. The crowd is going insane. Not like the horns and crap. Insane. I'm talking all their voices going nuts. Everyone on their feet going insane. Like all I did was I just looked back to the stands and the sideline, gave my little celebration, and just stood there and watched, dude. It was such an awesome spectacle. And that's one thing that's one thing that I love about the LFA, man, is how passionate it is. You know, it was an amazing experience at times for sure.
Yeah,
You
no
know?
matter, I think like you can feel proud, like obviously when you're in Japan, like you're a supporter of football here, you feel proud about the level of the game. But then like it's really hard not to cast a jealous eye over at like Mexico and Europe with these large crowds, you're like, oh man, I really wish we had that here. I wish like somebody would come up with better solutions or better marketing.
Scott, since we're on the
always,
topic,
yeah.
Since we're on the topic, let's go. I'd like to share my thoughts on what I'd like to see. Because it's not all sunshines and rainbows, right? I'd like to cast my thoughts on what I'd like to see out of each league to improve, right?
Okay.
Like, what are the weak points of every league? And I think you'd agree with me most parts on most of this, actually.
Okay.
But let's start with the ELF. I would like to see an expanded American import rule of some kind. I would like to see maybe every team can have an American offensive lineman. Or maybe expand to where Mexican, Canadian, and Japanese players have their own import category and they don't count as American. So say maybe every team can have 4 Americans and then maybe 1 or 2 other, right? So maybe you get like a real international experience where you're getting players from these different places that can help, boost the game. They do marketing pretty well, the fan turnout's pretty good for the top teams. I'd like to see a more dedicated approach to building programs in the ELF. Outside of the top 3, these teams that, are right there on the cusp, if they lose one game, they fire their quarterback, fire their head coach, fire their OC, they fire everybody. That is the solution. As of right now in the ELF, their only solution to not beating a top 3 program is to fire everybody.
Yeah. You're talking about Raiders.
I would challenge those programs to, hey, you brought this guy in.
Yeah.
Everyone that you're firing, you brought in. So
well, what about if they had a rule like Japan? Because obviously the roster is created and there's a roster lock. There's a deadline at the end of June.
Yep.
There's no player movement in Japan throughout the season. Actually, from
exactly where I was going with this.
Yeah, 2 months before the season, so the championship game, no one in, no one out.
What I was thinking about splitting the difference on that. I'd like to see the ELF have a locked roster. That's the reason why you have to invest in your backup local quarterback. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You don't just sign an American and then don't care about developing your local QB if you're just going to replace with a new American every time, right?
Right.
I would say this. I would say lock in the rosters like in Japan. Have 2 to 4 like practice squad backup signings. Okay. Where like I am submitting this on paper that like Aaron Ellis is my backup quarterback for this season. This is my emergency quarterback. So if my quarterback gets hurt, I can sign Aaron and only Aaron. He is my only other option. Okay. So we get kind of like the X League lock-in, but we also get teams an opportunity to have an emergency plan. One that's gonna promote cohesiveness with a team. Like, hey, this is my guy. I got to find a way to make it work. We're struggling offensively. Okay, is it something we're doing? What can I do to help him be better? You know what I mean? I would like to see that. That's a rule I would like to see in Europe.
Okay. If to be asked what I want to see in Europe, I would think just more trust. I don't think people trust the people at the top. I think there is still a widespread feeling that it's a thing for the money and it could collapse at any moment. I think there are certain, on a personal level, like with Inside Sport Japan, we've had one team and the league itself just grab our stuff, take it without ask it, use it, and then when asked to not to do it or to pay for it, we just blocked or told tough luck. Like there was one particular team that had to go through, like they just said, we're going to use your photos and images and there's nothing you can do about it. That's like a team that's supposed to be a professional team in a league. So to go through all of the social media companies to get the images taken down. Like, and then you hear the stories. I don't think you hear the stories as much now as you did in the first year. Or, you know, quarterbacks showing up and being told to go home at the airport, or, you know, housing being really bad or like full of mold. Like, but still, I mean, still you have teams like Barcelona that are collapsing and players are not getting paid, but not being allowed to, like the players not being allowed to move to Madrid because of various rules, even though it's gone to the commissioner of the league. So, you know, you see all the same complaints. Like the people at the top are more interested in their own businesses or making money. So, from outside, it's hard to have a lot of trust in that league or how long it will last. I don't know where or how they get their money. It seems to be, you know, you see people saying they should consolidate and not be expanding. But from here, it looks like they need those new teams. They need the entrance fees of those new teams to continue. I don't know if that's actually the case or how much those teams are paying. You hear all kinds of rumors, but if those
and that's just a recipe for disaster. I mean, we've seen it with other leagues in the past.
Right.
You know, not making money. I mean, the CFL is a great example of a league that was dying that expanded just to get the expansion fees to stave off the inevitable. Now, obviously, the CFL was able to stave off the inevitable, but with the ELF, I mean, I look at it and I'm like, okay, how long is this league going to last? At what point? I mean, I kind of described it, I think, at one time on social media, kind of the same way with the Arena Football League. Sounds like a Ponzi scheme because, you know, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. But at what point does the music stop? And obviously, for me, it came through when they were asking a year in advance about, you know, TV, you know, to watch games online. I'm like, oh, okay, wait a minute. That's,
or selling the tickets for one championship game before the current season is even complete. Yeah. But, you know, I think the big difference here, you know, we can say about how the X League has almost, you know, very small attendances or whatever. The X League is not a professional league. You know, it's semi-pro at most. So you had a maximum of 8 pro players, and only a few teams had those. Now you have a maximum of 6. Only a few teams have those. They don't need, I mean, they're all bankrolled by the big companies. Basically, they're not relying on gate fees. So the X League can survive. It's not good, but the X League can survive with low attendances. The ELF is a for-profit organization. So obviously there are investors. Obviously there's money coming in. When I talk about trust, what I mean is there's a feeling that if they don't make money, I mean, obviously the numbers of fans are going up, but only for a certain number of teams and not like massively jumping. If they don't get huge numbers of coming in through the gate, are they going to continue to get investors? And if they don't, is the league going to fail or just fold? And then what's going to be the situation in Europe with what's left behind?
That's my biggest concern. A lot of people.
Yeah. So
that was always my biggest concern was, you know, I want the ELF to make it. I really do.
Yeah.
I think it's good for football in Europe. I mean, you've seen a lot of these teams just be able to have more resources to developing their players.
Yeah. But I think they have to be more open. They have to be more open. They have to be more open. It's not good.
How long it takes for the league to respond to things is not good. There has to be a disparity. Like this whole Barcelona Dragons situation is getting out of hand. Yeah. It was getting out of hand, and there was no communication. There was no, you know, it took them forever to actually talk about all the issues.
But even Aaron, you know the thing, like, you know, the Volvo?
Yeah.
So,
no one's gotten where'd that Volvo go, baby? No one's gotten that car yet.
That's like, I mean, you announce that you're giving away a car at the championship game, a Volvo, and then you don't announce any winner, and you ignore all requests to where it actually went. Like that's really sketchy stuff. And that's just one example. There's a lot of stuff, like both public and behind the scenes, that you hear that can only be described as sketchy or shady. And I think the league never addresses it, most of it. And when it does, it's always in an unsatisfying manner. So there's a lack of trust for sure.
We have a term for it in America called Bush League.
Yeah.
I'm worried about the programs that were already historic programs that franchised into the league, like
Yeah.
Vienna,
Yeah.
right? So Vienna put all this money and resources to join the ELF. Why do programs do that? They do that because they see possibility to get a return on investment, right?
Yeah.
Revenue sharing, more ticket sales, more attention, all these things. However, as soon as they do that, their costs just went through the roof. Now, they're paying way more players, they're paying more money, paying more coaches. That league entrance fee is no joke, dude. It's like $250,000 euros, €250,000, something over 200,000 is crazy. And I'm worried that if the league doesn't succeed, then what happens to teams like that, right? They just lost all this money. Are they gone? I hope not, man. I really hope it works out. But like you said, that's where the X League kind of gets, the benefit, right? Because the LFA is in a similar predicament, although they have a lot more money in that league than the ELF, I believe. So,
I think they have like the rich owner backers, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's more of an American type thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's LFA's more stable, I would say.
Yeah.
They're definitely more stable.
It's it's not what you think of really when you think of Mexican football, especially leagues as well. But I think they have they have the billionaire owner type model for.
Now, I'm not saying they're super stable because the team folded right before the season. Literally, like 3 weeks before I flew out there, a team folded. So
right, yeah. But I mean, teams folded. Like we've had a couple of teams. Generally, they're lower division teams, but Japan. Yeah, I guess it's like I'm always like I'm asking, can we turn into a pro league and look at what's happened with basketball, look what's happened with rugby, look how things have exploded here. I think football could do the same, but the risk, of course, then is like if you don't succeed, when you're in a semi-pro league or an amateur league, you can just like there's no pressure to make money, and you can just kind of tip it. Like the X League has been going since 1971, essentially in one format or another. So. Then okay, what
so LFA, what I need to see, what I want to see American coaches. Okay, that doesn't mean just head coaches. That doesn't mean go hire a very knowledgeable American O-line coach. Go hire a very knowledgeable defensive specialist. Hire advisors. Bring that in, because one thing that I think is holding the LFA back is ego. You have some of these coaches that don't have the knowledge or quality to raise the level of the league, thinking they're the greatest gift to football. That's what I dealt with at Gallos, and I truly believe we had the personnel to be a top 4 program. We were held back by our coaching. So that's one thing. The other thing is just professionalism, man. I mean, Galgos players weren't paid. Reyes players weren't paid. I didn't get my last paycheck until a month after the season. Late payments, like the disrespect towards American players is so weird to me. Like, because we're coming there, we want to be a part of it. We want to help grow the game, and to just like be told that we're worthless, it's weird, man. It's so strange to me. So I would like to see some American coaching get in there. I would like to see the professionalism increase. The reffing has to change, dude, in the LFA. It is by far the dirtiest league I've ever played in my life. Okay. And most of that is on the refs. All right. They let it happen. Especially, there's such a disparity between personal fouls called on local players and personal fouls called on Americans.
Yeah.
Such a disparity.
You can see that. Didn't I warn you about that before you went there? I told you,
I got warned. I was prepared for it. I didn't think it would be as bad as what I was told, but it was as bad as I was told. Like you'll see an American quarterback get absolutely ragdolled. I got face mask ripped and high load at the same time. No call. But then you'll see a Mexican quarterback take a hit after a throw, flag immediately.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's not good for the league. And then when it comes to the X League, I just, like you said, we're not trying to be fully professional, and that's okay. I would like to see a world where it happens, but if it doesn't, that's okay too. But what we need to see, I think, is an increase in effort to grow the game by, more eyes on it, by more, fans in the stands. All right. But that has to be done in good conscience, knowing that money is going to be put back into the league. So, for example, like X League TV. All right. Dentsu showed their spring game for free on YouTube this spring. I had no idea about it to the last minute. That's something the league should have pushed so hard because, hey, guys, here's a free game on YouTube, easily accessible, of Japanese football. Come give it a watch.
Yeah.
So I think the X League should pick 5 to 7 games out of the year, good games, not Panasonic versus the Suns, but good games, and put it for free on YouTube to help. Hey, guys, come watch. It's easily accessible. You don't have to go create an account on a Japanese website. You don't have to go through the hassle of paying for it. Right here. Here's your program. Enjoy it.
Japan's obviously the fans is a difficulty, but I mean, you're not going to get the fans with the way the league is right now because, I mean, we can see who's going to be in the championship game before the season starts. I mean, if it's maybe not exact. I mean, the last few years we could tell it was going to be Panasonic and Fujitsu. I mean, and with Fujitsu probably winning it, which is the way it turned out. Obic, of course, are there now as well. I think Obic have improved, but I mean, you look at as soon as the schedule comes out, what was it the year before last? I predicted the result of every single game and right before the season until the end of the season, before the season even kicked off. I got every single. I made a thing out where I wrote it out. I changed some of them week to week when we were doing the thing, but in the preseason one I'd made, I got every single game except one where Fineys and Obic had a tie. That was the only one that I didn't get right in the entire season on the preseason guess. So competitiveness is the nature of attractiveness in football or any sport. If your games are not competitive, if there's no drama, if the outcome is a foregone conclusion, you're only going to get the diehards who love the team. You're not going to get people who are going casually to just go and enjoy the football, enjoy the atmosphere. So,
you got to give people a reason to watch, and the X League's not doing it.
No, it's a really difficult one. Fujitsu are doing it right. It's not that. I think what happens often is like they try to drag back the leaders into the pack rather than trying to lift the level of everyone. So. But again, it's a money thing, right? Not everyone can bring in that level of coaches or that number of coaches or that quality of players. So it's a really difficult thing when you're an amateur league or semi-pro league. If you became a fully professional league, I think you can mandate a lot of stuff and create rules, salary caps and talent caps and, even drafts because we have a college system, but it's not a professional league. So a lot of the obvious things are not available. There's no real easy solution. I think they had a better league a couple of years ago where they had everyone like a smaller top division with everyone playing everyone. The way it's going back this year, I think will just increase the number of blowouts. So I'm not a fan of the new system. But again, it's been done because teams don't have the money. Yeah.
That's absolutely where this is another category that the LFA takes the number one spot is competitiveness.
Yes.
Only because the LFA, any team really could beat anyone, right?
Yeah.
Here you have the 1-6 Reyes losing games by just a couple scores. You have we beat the Dinos. Dinos beat Fundadores. We lost to Fundadores. Dinos go to the playoffs. We lose to the Jefes. You know what I mean? Like, it really is a league where it really depends on the day. Whereas in Europe, Europe's kind of similar to Japan in that respect, that you can predict most of the games pretty easily.
Isn't your old team is, what was it? Hold on, let me just go. Yeah, the 2022 season is your team, Gallos Negros, went 1-5 in the regular season and made it to the
Yeah, everyone can
championship.
say what they want about us. We were the most successful Gallos Negros team. Sorry.
Yeah, but
wins
that
this
team
season.
went 1-5 and made it to the championship game.
Yeah.
How about that? 1-5 in the
Yeah.
regular season, made the playoffs, and went all the way to the championship game, losing by 4 points to Fundidores.
Yeah.
Like, that's
And
insane.
hats off to the LFA for sure
Yeah.
for doing that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. So, I just want to close my remarks saying that, some people are going to say, oh, X League's paying you. So yeah, of course you're going to side with them. No. Okay. If anyone that knows me knows that I speak my mind, I don't lie. I don't hold things back. I say exactly what I'm thinking.
Okay.
The X League has earned my respect over everything. The way the players commit to this, the way the players work insane hours. You'll talk about, they do it in Europe and Mexico too. No, they don't. Most of my teammates are working 50, 60-hour weeks, dude, in high-stress jobs, tired as crap. And then they come on the weekends and practice 6 hours a day. 6 hours a day. Their devotion to this game is higher. It just is. And it shows with their play and their discipline and how they treat each other and how they treat their opponents and how they just respect everything that it is about football.
Okay, I'll give you let's do some stuff like this. Name one or two players in Mexico and in Europe that you think could play in Japan.
Oh, that's a good one. Okay.
If possible, local players.
If not, possible, local players.
I mean, there's a few. There's a couple of players I think that could. I mean, there's the obvious players. Like for me, are the players you'd like to see playing in the X League.
Okay.
So
well,
I'll give
it's going to be hard to say a local player because not many X League teams would waste the resource. Not waste the resource, but use an American spot on a guy that hasn't really played American college. I will say this: Louis Geyer with the Stuttgart Surge could absolutely be a dominating receiver in the X1 Super.
Where's he from?
He's German. I played with him. He was 21 years old when I played with him in Stuttgart. He's close to being the all-time leading receiver in the league now. Yeah, because of longevity, but the dude really should have a shot at like the CFL. He's the hardest worker European player I've ever been with. Dude is a monster. He really knows football. He would actually succeed in X1 Super. Now, from an American player standpoint, because I'm not thinking just playing level, I'm thinking about personality.
Yeah.
Who can come into Japan and mesh well with everything? Shelton Epler, he can do it.
Yeah. His brother's played pro sports in Japan anyway, so.
Because Shelton's a good player, but more importantly, Shelton's he's a good man.
Yeah.
Right. He's very competitive, but he's a good man. He's a hardworking, honest person. Yeah. So he would work into that Japanese system. I think JJ Hop would do well in Japan. One of my receivers from Mexico. From a couple others in Mexico. Let's see. I think from Cadillos, I think from a local player standpoint, one of their D linemen, he sacked me 6 times. He could actually probably play well in the X1 Super. And then from my team, Matt Barrett, linebacker, amazing player, nonstop motor, but more importantly, an amazing person, an amazing teammate. He's like, if I had to, I would call him the linebacker John Stanton, pretty much, when it comes to just who he is as a person.
Well, John Stanton was a linebacker.
Oh yeah, they moved him, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing.
To me, he's just a younger John Stanton because they're so similar in what they do. And then from European standpoint, people just don't understand, dude. It's not easy playing in Japan.
No.
A lot of these guys' personalities, I would never bring them to Japan ever. Wouldn't do it. So my list is very small, but
Okay, I'll throw some names at you and let me think if you think. How about
perfect.
AJ Wentland?
I don't know enough about him as a person. He is a tackling machine for sure, but I would take Zachary Blair or Matt Barrett over him.
Really?
Absolutely.
Really? Wow.
Because I watch all of his games.
Yeah.
Zachary Blair is just a better all-around player to have.
Wow.
Zach's blocking punts. He's blocking field goals. He's picking the ball off. He's forcing fumbles. He's making special teams plays, and he's top 4 in tackles. And he's number 2 or number 1 for tackles for loss. AJ's just a tackle machine.
Yeah.
Having 10 tackles in a game or 13 tackles a game, that could be 10 yards down the field. Whereas Zach's got tackle for losses. He's going.
Okay, so how about Kyle Hitchens?
Kyle could do it for sure. Kyle could do it. Now, as a personality thing, I would like to see him be more like level-headed about himself. Okay. I like Kyle. He is a good guy, man. It's just sometimes he comes off a little like cocky.
Okay.
But he's a great guy, great player. He could do it.
Yeah, Japan there's been a lot of great players who just didn't mesh with it's one of the hardest probably to mesh with.
You got to have the right. You have to have the right temperament to live here.
Yeah,
and spend quality time, because it can be, and you guys all know, can be very isolating at times. It's as foreign of a place as you're going to find on the planet.
I think, Greg, that's a really good point. I think probably, Aaron, you'd agree with that too. I think Japan is probably the most isolating for a player, right? In these other countries, you're surrounded by other imports, right?
John, my first year, guys, I have John to thank for keeping me in Japan, because I came in, my team had no other Americans. I would go a week or two without speaking English to anybody. Yeah. It was really weighing on me. It was right before the season. I was struggling. I didn't know what was going on. I was not happy. I was not doing well, because I didn't know how. I didn't know how I had to adjust to Japan.
Yeah.
And, I was getting ready to leave, man. And John was like, I promise you, if you stay, you won't regret it. And
did I say that?
Something along those lines.
Sounds a bit cheesy for me.
Well, it was cheesy, because if you look at what you texted me and then how that season ended with an MVP title, winning X1 area, and then winning promotion, it was like a fucking movie.
Fair enough.
That's what it felt like.
So, it was a football version of Mr. Baseball, is what it was.
Yeah. I'll give you one more name, Aaron. Ireland's number 1 quarterback. Is he frozen? He's frozen. Oh, no, you're still there.
I'm here. Hello? Hello?
No, he's still there. He's there.
Okay. The QB1 for Ireland, Jadrian Clark.
Jay Clark. I think he could do it.
Yeah.
I think he could do it. I'm 50-50 on that one.
Really?
Because I like Clark. I think he's a good guy. But I'm just not sure. Because he has the right tools, because it's very important in Japan that you put football IQ over skill when you come to quarterback position, in my opinion. Because to me, the best quarterbacks that have played in the X League were guys that had a great football mind.
That is true.
It's not guys that are crazy athletes or anything. Like,
that is true.
Like, I watched some of Kevin Kraft's play. Yeah. He wasn't no superstar running the ball. He wasn't he wasn't throwing Russell Wilson 100-mile-an-hour balls. He was a very smart player. He was a very smart quarterback, and I think those are the guys that succeed. And Clark's strength is his IQ. He's not a freakish athlete, so I think he could do it.
Okay. That's interesting. Let's see. Is there anything else? Okay, so let's just, like, you've talked about the things you'd like to see improve. How about on the field stuff? What area do you think Europe needs to catch up to Mexico or Japan most in? I mean, it's difficult because they don't have college football.
Defense.
Defense? Especially secondaries, right? Yeah.
The secondary, man. Yeah, I mean, look, so here's the thing. you look in Europe, right? If you're on a top team as a quarterback, you're going to throw for 30 touchdowns on the year or close
Yeah.
to. You're going to throw for 20, 24 plus. That's just how it is. You know what I mean? Like because when you're on a good program and you're playing these teams, like I'd say there's only, as a whole secondary, there's only 4 teams in the ELF that have a good secondary, like a good secondary, good overall secondary. It's
Yeah.
hard. Playing DB is hard. It's not an easy position. And finding that many guys in Europe when teams are so spread out, playing DB at a high level, it's not easy.
One
That's
thing
why
that
some
always
teams
stuck with me when
Go ahead.
I remember you telling me even like Minerva or some of the teams that were in area, like the complexity of what they were doing on the back end and stuff. Like you're like,
it's like
you never
I'm
see
playing
this in
Minerva
Europe.
first game.
Yeah.
We win 24-21 on a last minute drive for a field goal, but it's like what are you guys really doing that right now?
Yeah.
Are we running that split coverage in this situation? Holy shit. Like they're communicating constantly. Yeah. So in Europe, I want to see an increase in secondary play. I don't know if that means investing more in high quality DB coaches. I don't know. But because we all talked about this, Europe has a high level of like linebacker play, lineman play, because they're bigger, stronger, they're just bigger people.
Yeah.
And then, in Mexico, I'd like to see an increase in O-line play.
Okay.
And I think that comes down to coaching. I think you start bringing American O-line coaches out to LFA, you see a huge increase in the O-line play. Because really in the LFA, you only have 2 to 3 teams that have like very consistent O-line play.
Yeah.
I love my O-line. I love those guys a lot. And I think it was coaching that held us back. I got sacked 10 times in one game. I got sacked 37 times in 8 games. Like it's
Crazy.
like that's a lot. And it wasn't always on them. It was like, hey, we're coaching them wrong. We're doing the wrong thing. So, and then in Japan, I would like to see an increase in just in
Forward.
unique offensive play calling. Well, sure, more forward. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so because a lot of Japanese offenses are still very basic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, yeah. So whereas, I'd like to see some more IBM Big Blue type stuff, not necessarily throwing the ball all the time, but let's get creative. Let's use a lot more motions. Let's use different formations. Let's,
Yeah.
That's what I'd like to see.
Yeah. T formation. Bring it back for sure.
Bring it back, baby. Whatever. Something different.
Speaking of Minerva, I forgot, like, and European football, they brought in Lance Leota and Solomon Brown.
Leota.
And Ian Park. I think that has to be like the most improved group of, like, they have just 3 massive people. Like, that's Ian, like, obviously a former NFL, he's with the Eagles, Deers as well, like veteran of the X League. Lance Leota was with, I think it was Leipzig, wasn't it? And Solomon Brown.
Yeah, Leipzig. Yep.
Panthers, was it? I'm not sure who
Solomon was with the Panthers. Yep.
Yeah.
He was with the Panthers.
I mean, I'm really looking forward to Minerva's games this year. I mean, they'll probably lose all of their games because of the schedule that they have. 3 like really good players is still not going to be enough to close the gap. But I mean, that's definitely one of the most interesting teams to watch this year. And I think if you're a European football fan as well, see how those guys do on the newly promoted Minerva. I think Fujitsu they have first, maybe.
I just hope Lance and Solomon are coming in hungry and understanding this is going to be a challenge. I hope I just hope they're not coming in thinking, oh no, I dominated in the ELF, I'm going to dominate here.
I think Lance has a lot of like friends in rugby here, obviously, Pacific Islander. So like I think, and Solomon's been here and he's posting on social media himself and his wife are going to have a baby here. So I think both of them are coming in like different than your usual kind of import, like committed and understanding. So I expect a lot of success.
I don't know Solomon much, but I know Lance. He's a really good dude.
Yeah.
He's going to work well with that with Japanese culture for sure.
I think that's one of the more interesting ones. But no, this has been such a, like, we're always asked to compare the two, and like when you put up rankings, everyone's always telling you're wrong, except for Fujitsu because they're number 1 usually. But everyone else thinks
Anyone
they're
that
in the
doesn't
wrong
agree
spot.
with me, I got 3 challenges for you. First
Mhm.
challenge: how about you try to play in all of them? Because I'll be honest with you, most of you can't because
Right.
your egos are too big and you're too much of a narcissistic asshole to understand what it takes to be a team player. Secondly,
Greg,
come
that's
watch
the
film with me.
headline.
This one doesn't apply to just players. Come watch film with me. Let's watch film on Zoom.
Yeah.
I'll go through an LFA game. I'll go through an X League game. I'll go through an ELF game. We can do it. That's fine. And thirdly, this is just my opinion from what I have experienced. If you
Yeah.
don't like it, that's fine. I'm not attacking anyone. I think there's great football in the ELF, the LFA, and the X League.
Absolutely.
All of them in their own rights have strengths and weaknesses. And
Yeah.
I think if somehow you could put all 3 together, it would be a great football league.
Yeah.
Like an absolute great, amazing league. But it's the whole point. You have to criticize to improve.
Yeah, of course.
That's the problem with the ELF right now. Anyone that criticizes the ELF is being called a hater, and people are like jumping on them. How about we acknowledge the problems and work for solutions? Because we all want football to grow. We want the ELF to work. We want the LFA to work. We want the X League to work. So
maybe someday we'll get a World Club Championship. That's my dream.
I hope so, man.
That's my dream.
I would love to see it once and for all. And hey, if Cadillos comes and beats Fujitsu, great for them, dude.
That would be number one.
Be great for football in Mexico. They'd be number one, and we would gladly put that at the top of the ranking.
Absolutely.
We would gladly put them up there.
Yeah. I think we came close in the years before COVID. There was a few. I'm not going to mention the teams' names, but there was a few teams that were close to coming out here and playing against. Some of the
it sounds
top
like the LFA might be funding it now, and they want to try to get Cadillos
the
out
LFA
there.
Definitely wanted it. If we could just get people here to agree to it, that would be good. So we keep making videos like this and pushing it. But thanks a million, Aaron. That's so enlightening, so good. I don't know, Greg, are we missing anything else?
No, I don't think so. We've covered quite a bit. I mean, we've been on for over 90 minutes, man. We're pushing almost 2 hours here. So we've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, especially when we're just doing like one particular topic, which is like just comparing the leagues. But I think there's a lot of stuff that needed to be said and a lot of really good information. So it's only the start of the conversation anyway, because while there's no one else that's played in all 3, there are people like Shelton, like some of the like Chris Vaughan, who's played with Noji Man and then Caudillo. So there's a lot of people who've played on 2 of the leagues. So maybe get them in as well and talk to them and see like that how it compares and what they think of Aaron's opinions and if they agree or where they disagree or stuff like that. It'd be really good. So
they're going to disagree, and that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. You're right. You don't care.
Because think about it this way: when you're looking at that, if a player was not brought back by their Japanese team and then they go somewhere else and they do well, they're automatically going to just be like, "Hey, no, this is better than the X League." So
this is the thing you always have to bear in mind, like when you're talking to anyone, like if someone is successful in a place, obviously they'll have a more favorable opinion of it. I mean, and also like you said, teams change year to year, so nothing's ever set in stone. We can only approximate situations and get an idea, but I think we got as close as we could tonight to getting a definitive answer. So
absolutely,
basically.
It'll generate some controversy online, I'm sure.
Yeah. So what was it Aaron said, Greg? You're an asshole if you don't agree with him, something like that.
Something like that.
I think Greg will make the video title Fujitsu's number 1. I'm right, and you're an asshole if you don't agree with me. Aaron Ellis,
I didn't say that.
Yeah. Hashtag LFA. Hashtag ELF.
Yeah. Tag them all in. Tag in all the leagues and all the teams and clubs. But yeah. I think we should probably you're back to Dentsu, right? Soon enough.
Yes, sir. September 8th, first game against Blue Thunder. Hope you guys watch.
Blue Thunder with their former UCLA QB, Lee Diamond. So that'll be
Should be a good matchup.
Yeah. Then we get to see UCLA versus St. Francis, a matchup that's been a century in the making.
The Bruin versus a Saint.
Yeah.
But then again, you know what? People knock the NAIA, but University of St. Francis, that's from Joliet. Is about as tough as a football town as you're going to get in Chicago. So,
yeah. And with realignment, Greg, you never know. It could be a real matchup anyway, the way these college teams all move around these days.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, that's right. UCLA is part of the Big Ten this year. So,
that's insane.
Yeah, no, it's a whole new world.
Weird.
And hey, Aaron, when is practice? I mean, how soon before you're entering, camp here? I mean, it's pretty. You're going to be coming here pretty quick.
I fly out Friday. Sunday we have our scrimmage against the Deers, so that'll be a good test to see where we're at as a team right now.
Were you supposed to come out last week with all that?
No,
chaos with the airport.
I was supposed to fly out today. My visa was a few days late, so.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
I had the same thing. My first day in Japan, I arrived in after like a 26-hour journey, and literally from the airport, I was driven into work to work my first shift.
Yep, there it is. It is.
That's Japan for you.
No time to waste.
Hey, final thing. No one take this too personally, man. No. I have a lot of respect for all you players out there from all these leagues, so don't get too butthurt about this.
Just look behind Greg. The one thing we all have in common is we love the game. We love football.
We love football. That's all.
Yeah. And we're here. Two of us are in Japan talking about football in Mexico and Europe. So I mean, and not getting paid to do so. So at midnight. So we love the game. We're fans of all three leagues and every other league as well. So it's
and this
them and hope they grow.
Yeah, and this, to me, football season always starts when the CFL kicks off. But for most people, this is the week when football really begins, with obviously training camps opening up. Our Bears going to be playing here in a couple weeks.
Hall of Fame game.
Yeah, Hall of Fame game, and so I mean.
We should actually probably make plans, the three of us, for the Super Bowl in February, since the Bears will be there for the first time in who knows how long, since the Prince won in Tampa. But
John, we can dream.
So much for having me. Really
appreciate it. You're welcome, buddy. You're welcome, and we'll definitely be seeing you more. Obviously, we're going to see you more. Once you're over here, and getting you back on camera. And John and I are, with BJ now coaching at Fujitsu, it's just John and I. So there's always an extra chair.
Yeah. We'll have to start bringing in more different people. Yeah.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So, well, listen, hey, everybody who's watching, everybody who is listening, I know a lot of people over in the States right now are just kind of waking up, so they won't be catching the live stream. But, when you do watch it, hey, thank you very much for watching and listening to the podcast. Thank you for listening. But John and I, we're going to be back soon, hopefully sooner rather than later. John and I was over in the States too in June, and came back broke, kind of like most people travel nowadays.
We got to get back into it. Season starting soon. Rosters are out. Let's get it.
We got a lot of football to talk about. And Aaron, we will see you on the flip side. We'll be talking more once we get off air here. And so hopefully, soon we're going to have you back on the show and talking about all the great things that you're going to be doing with Dentsu this year.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, listen, for John, Aaron, myself, thank you very much for tuning in, and we will be talking to you very, very soon. Bye-bye.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com. Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, But as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website, seriously, all you got to do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you got to do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.